Buonasera a tutti. Sono Johan Rui, direttore artistico di Maxi. Siamo molto felici stasera di avere invitato Emilia Kabakov con noi, di parlare del suo lavoro, naturalmente con il marito di Emilia, Ilya. Queste sono due, diciamo, leggenti storici della creazione contemporanea, anche come si dice, la apertura verso un altro mondo, in senso che non solo che l'occidentale ha trovato un movimento molto importante di avanguardia in Russia negli anni 60, 70, 80 ad oggi, anche un'apertura verso un'altra possibilità di pensare l'avanguardia come una cosa ancora importante per il nostro tempo. E anche abbiamo una grande fortuna di avere un'opera di Kabakov a questa mostra della collezione. Allora, cambio in inglese per cominciare la conversazione con Emilia. So, Emilia, welcome. We are extremely happy and honored to have you here. Of course, you and Ilya are both legends of our time, legend of the contemporary creation, not only in terms of for the Western art world to discover on the other side of the war. I mean, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, there an incredible, strong, dynamic movement of avant-garde, but also your work helps us to understand that it's still necessary to look at this heritage, this legacy of being avant-garde, to embrace the future, that it's another moment, the opening of this world that we need badly today. Welcome.
Thank you. It's very dangerous to believe that you're a legend, because if you believe you're a legend, you grow up so big in your head that you just have to die to be really a legend. Because we prefer to be alive, we don't believe we're a legend. We take it with a sense of humor. We're very happy to be here. I'm sorry Ilya doesn't travel anymore, but one of us has to work, and it's actually him. He's making paintings right now. I have to go install works, arrange things, and then come back, and then we do new works, and then we continue the way we work for the last 30 years.
Yes. Of course, we are very happy to have your work here in the exhibition of our collection. This work is not yet in our collection, but we have really a great chance to have the work to be shown here, reminding us, of course, your work has always been a part of our memory of the making of this museum, and we have a very large installation that it was not shown now, but
it's on
the images that it really shows the history of Russia, and from the old time to the Soviet time, and was like incredible kind of theater scene that absorbed you into this dramatic narrative of history. And this one actually brings us to maybe the opposite direction, which is much more lyric, much more angelic, let's say.
Strangely enough, we work in Italy a lot, and many of our works in Italy it's about angels. I can't explain this. Maybe the atmosphere is very either religious or trying to create some kind of angelic waves here. This is about angel, and I apologize, I just broke it because it's not. The wings has to be straight. I try to wear them because I really want to feel like an angel before I give a lecture, but I broke them. They have to fix it now. The installation that museum owns, it's a very important installation. It was done 10 years ago. Where is our place? It's about place of human being in society. It's about society. Do we belong to the past? Do we belong to the present? Do we belong to the future? Where exactly is the place of human being today? 10 years later, from the moment it was created, it's actually one of the most important work we ever did, and it's today, and it does belong to Maxi Museum. Unfortunately, it's too big, it's too expensive to put up, so I think it was traveling for a while.
Yeah, actually we give it loan to another museum. Is traveling.
Yes, it's traveling, but at some point it will be, and you can see it. It gives 3 levels of human existence: past, present, and we don't know future. Yes, here it is.
This is right.
So on the bottom of on the floor, you have some kind of holes covered, and you have little words, like Lilliputian world there. Do we belong to this world or not? Then on the level of your eyes, you have contemporary photographs of Soviet time. It doesn't matter that it's Russian photographs. It could be anywhere, from any country. We are contemporary of these photographs, or are they our past? And then you see these big figures. But we only have half of them, and we have half of photographs, paintings, Baroque paintings. They have gold frames. The people wear old-fashioned clothes. It's a past, future. Are we looking into the past? Are they looking into the past? Or are they looking into the future? That's why we don't see them. It's a very controversial. And the same situation is with us today as a human beings. We don't know where we are. We're in the middle of shifting of reality, internet, for young people. We don't really know where we stand with everything. Are we on the left side, on the right side? What's going on here? It's a shifting of continents.
Yes. I remember the first time, of course, seeing your work. I was in China in 1985 or 6 when the New York Times published a special issue on Russian Soviet avant-garde or something like that, and we saw some images of so-called underground Soviet art as a kind of really a moment of discovery for us, and immediately I was really thinking there's a deep connection between the avant-garde movement on the eastern side of the Berlin Wall, let's say, that of course, you know, it has a very important history of resistance and fighting for freedom and so on. But on the other hand, it's also there's an incredible kind of optimism behind this very strong sense of resistance and fighting against oppression. And this optimism maybe it's perfectly translated in the image of the angel today. But at the time, I remember the most famous work that we saw was the man who imagined or dreamed to fly. And this image of flying always remains something incredibly strong. And then I went to Moscow in the 90s and visited the studio of you and Ilya. And that was also, of course, when I said legend, it's really a legend because that was the place where the so-called avant-garde community met very often and developed their work together, conversations together. And you just told me that there's an intention to turn that into a museum of conceptual art.
Conceptual art, yes.
Yeah. And
We can talk about two types of avant-garde artists, 1920s. The difference between avant-garde 1920s and what we so-called avant-garde of 60s, 70s, 80s in Moscow is huge. The avant-garde of 20s built their work with a lot of enthusiasm. They were building the future. They believe in this future. They really believe in socialism, communism, of destroying everything old and building something contemporary, new, different. New men, new society, better future. It failed. As we know, many of them died, many of them ended up in jail. It was a tragedy of art, tragedy of people, tragedy of cultural history of the country and maybe of the world. But luckily for the whole humanity, a lot of work survived, and we have them today. They are legends and icons. Then 60s, 70s, it's underground art. I don't know if we can call them avant-garde, but it was underground. It was the art done in the atmosphere of fear, suppression, oppression. People who hide what they did. For example, Ilya, for making his living, illustrated children's books. And that was how he made his money and make his living. Since then, we got a lot of offers to illustrate children's books. He never did it again. He said, I have it up to here. I did my portion. I don't want to do it. That was for money. Art is what I want to do. And behind all these children drawings and illustration as his official job, in his studio, they made paintings. But of course, his painting was dangerous if somebody would see them. Only very small community of his close friends, like Bulatov, Vasilyev, and some other artists, Chekhov, they were allowed to come to his studio. They were allowed to have this conversation. Conversation was very careful, because they knew people listen. I remember I was much younger, and I was like 16, 17. I come to his studio, and I'm a rebel. I always say what I think, and I start talking about something that I went, and against government, let's say. And Ilya said, shh. I said, why? They're listening. Who is listening? They are listening. So you don't name who is listening, but somebody always listens to you. There is a famous painting he did in 50s, late 50s, early 70s, 60s, which called listening. So two people kind of this way to each other in the room. They're listening. Somebody listening or they're listening, we don't know, but that's position of them, which is abnormal. Famous poets, writers, musicians used to come to the studio because that was the only place they felt maybe not completely free, but at least in some atmosphere which was artistic, which were progressive, and they could trust each other. It doesn't mean that there were no KGB agent. Later we discovered, yes, there were some of close friends who actually were at the same time working for KGB. We never named them. Some of them named publicly, but somebody else. A book for KGB general wrote a book, and in this book mentioned who worked for them from this circle. But the others we know, we're still friends, we know. Some people are stronger, some people are more weaker. You can't blame everybody for what they did in this life. They had choices, they chose a different choice. This is one of the first paintings, early paintings. Early works were conceptual, and that was one of conceptual. I recently bought, incidentally, a painting which we were thinking is lost, and that's a painting, the soccer player, footballist. It's 1956, I believe, or 64, some 64. It's not this one. This is a painting which is conceptual, and you know, there is a Russian artist Monastyrsky, which is purely conceptual artist, younger than Ilya, and he said this painting turned his world around. He became a conceptual artist because he saw Kabakov's work, and that's for many young generation artists and even writers. That was very main point, very important point in their life when they understood the difference between Soviet art, official art, and unofficial art. And because they couldn't get much information from the West, it was forbidden, they didn't have it. Very often, journalists and writers, when they write, they said, Soviet artists, Russian artists copy Western artists. That's not really true. As Boris Groys, who is a very famous writer and art critic and philosopher, said, Moscow conceptualism is different from Western conceptualism because it's romantic, it's poetic. And that's a different. Western is a very practical conceptualism. Moscow is romantic conceptualism. And in order to decipher this, we don't have time, you have to go to read Boris Groys. What else can I say? Yeah. At some point, the atmosphere became better. People had some hopes. They were thinking there is a warmer climate. They could travel. They could make art and nobody will punish them for this art. That was a big mistake because there was, as I don't know, people know, there was a bulldozer exhibition and a lot of art was destroyed. Some people had to immigrate, they were forced to immigrate. Ilya stayed. At that time, 1973, I left Soviet Union, and Ilya was the person who actually took me to the train. It was the last person I saw was Ilya. And I said, go with me, and he said, I can't. My culture is here, my life is here, my friends are here. I can't go. So he was not ready mentally and emotionally to leave his society, his friends. It's not he was afraid of the West. He wasn't really, because he didn't spend much money, he didn't need much. But he was really afraid of losing this warmth of this circle, support of his friend, and all of a sudden go into cosmos, like his installation, The Man Who Flew into Space from his apartment. This is a man who decided to escape from this society, from regime. And he found some forces, he calculated very carefully, that if he built a catapult, he will jump, and these forces will take him into the universe. I will take a little story which is true, and it will be first time I'm actually telling it publicly, but it's okay. In Moscow, in New York, there was a very big exhibition in Russia. And this installation was the last one on the top floor. And because it was big group exhibition shown Russian art, including icons and classical paintings and Soviet paintings. Putin came to open this exhibition. And when Putin came to open, somebody took him around to show and explain. And I was walking behind because I want to know how they're going to explain this particular installation. They have to tell the truth. This is escapism. This person is trying to escape from oppressive regime, from totalitarian regime. And they come to the installation, he walk inside, I'm standing on the side, I can hear them, and the person who taking him around tell him, Vladimir Vladimirovich, this is a very important Russian artist and a very important installation. It's about our Russian people, how they love God so much that this person created catapult, which actually throw him into the cosmos so he could be closer to God. Brilliant, right? It's a brilliant explanation. I wouldn't come up with it.
Yeah. Well, Emilia, I would like to ask you. You mentioned that the Russian or the Soviet conceptualism is more romantic, right? Which is really true, and in a way, also it's very interestingly realistic, in the sense that, especially from the paintings of Ilya and also this earlier paintings, also Bulatov, that we know at the time was really considered.
I just 1 second. I have to say something. Yeah. Bulatov is not really a conceptual artist. Yes. Bulatov doesn't consider himself conceptual artist. He will be very upset if you say this.
Good.
We give labels.
Yes.
Artists not always agree with these labels.
Yes. Well, what I was trying to say is actually, when you look at the technique of the paintings and also the visuality of the paintings, is very interestingly related to the printed material, the printed matters of that time, the quality of the color prints that actually somehow influenced, for example, this kind of painting. It reminds me, the magazines that you saw at the time, the way how there was the color, how it was printed. Somehow there's something so realistic in terms of maybe one can say there's another kind of like pop art that the American pop art is closer to the color, the color of Times Magazine, Newsweek, and so on. And this looks much closer to kind of, I don't know, Soviet quality of print.
It's not about print. It's about irony of Soviet reality. For example, this painting. It's a candy covers, candy wrappers covering the painting. They're sewn on the painting. And the reason for this is because every painting has a narrative. Russian art, Soviet art, not Soviet, Russian conceptual art, it's about narratives, about some story always behind the painting, behind the work, behind the sculpture, and specifically behind each installation, which started later. This painting is much later. This is now, like 15 years ago. What first paintings with the flowers, it's the Russian Soviet life, it's so boring, it's so drab, it's like printed material of Soviet magazines. Colors are insignificant, they're not sharp, clear like in the West. And objects are not important. So this poor artist has to decorate his painting to make this life and his picture better. Yeah. Ironically, we're going to have retrospective at Tate in October. And recently, Ilya made paintings which are actually very beautiful, very subtle landscapes, figures, not really figurative, but artistic, let's say, images. And they cover it with dots. He used dots in 60s, and now he come back to dots again. Why dots? It's called the temporary distortion of the vision. And we say, comparing to previous, which painting with the dots, with the flowers, now with the dots, he come to the West, life become much better, much more interesting, has more colors. But unfortunately, his vision has dots. It's temporarily distorted. He can't see reality.
Even like this. And then how he and you maybe started collaborating? Sorry, how did you start collaborating together?
I was working already in the art. I was advisor for some collectors in New York for many years by the time he arrived. And when he arrived, it was 1987. So we met again. And I said that I actually can work with you. I would be very interested. I'm an original pianist, classical pianist. And he was very afraid that for me to touch anything, he was, you get your hands dirty. Don't do it, please. Just wait for me, we're going to the restaurant. I said, I want to go to the restaurant. I want to help. So eventually he accepted that I actually can move things and actually touch door too, and nothing is going to happen. I'm not going to fall apart, and I'm not going to run away. And he said that the first 10 years he was always very careful that someday I will tell, I don't want to do this, I'm leaving. And then he discovered, okay, I'm staying, I'm here. And we started working. I was helping in the beginning. I was learning. I knew contemporary art, but I didn't know it so well, especially Russian. But I always think you can learn a lot if you pay attention, if you read a lot, if you look at art enough. Your eyes get some quality. You start to recognize quality and make a difference. And there is a certain luggage in your head by that time of culture and art that let you see and distinguish between bad art and good art. And eventually, fantasy always had a lot of fantasy, too much of it.
And then, of course, his early paintings, I don't know, but also, the continuous practice of paintings become really a very special kind of model of let's say, a typology of painting that is kind of resisting to so-called socialist realism, right? By introducing this conceptual approach and the collage of different layers of images and so on. And how did he shift to installation? For example, this famous one,
the man who flew into space.
The man who dreams to fly.
When Ilya came to the West, even before he came to the West, 1984, before he was doing paintings, drawings, all these kind of things, typical for the artist. at some point it wasn't enough for him. They didn't exactly transfer some feelings and emotions and even philosophical ideas that he had. So he did first installation, which was very small, then 16-string installation in his studio. This installation was first done in 1984 in his studio. So he would put it up, show it to the friends, and then take it away so nobody else see it. When somebody incidentally come to the studio, like firemen or to check, somebody from the government, it's not there. And then when he came to the West, it was absolutely clear that people in the West don't know Soviet context. They don't know Russians. For them, Russia, it's still Siberia. It's still something completely wild when people are crawling on the street in fur coats. And in order to understand context, without understanding context, you don't understand this art. It's impossible. It's like Russians wouldn't understand American art because they don't know the context. They don't know these typical American stereotypes or cultural legends or cultural icons. Same with Russian foreigners. In order to present this context, you need three-dimensional situation when people, you need creation of atmosphere. And this is very difficult. And the genius lies in the artist genius is in the ability to create this atmosphere when people walk in, and the atmosphere is completely different from the museum situation, a gallery situation, from where they walk into the installation. They suddenly find themselves in a closed environment which affect their memories, provoke their memories. Cultural, everyday life. For example, somebody can walk into the room and say, my grandmother lived exactly in the same kind of room. It's very typical. It's nostalgic. Somebody can come and say, this looks like a painting of somebody, very famous painting, because actually what installation is, it's three-dimensional painting. We have to remember that. You move something, you change the atmosphere. Very important for installation is light, it's sound, if you use sound, it's colors. A little thing, sometimes when we do installation, we paint the room 8 times, and workers can't understand who work with us at the museums. They think we're crazy, or said, half a centimeter this painting, move this painting. For them, it doesn't matter. For us, it destroys the installation. It's very important. That's why I said about the thing. It's fine, but there is a little details right now which doesn't make it fine, doesn't give you impression, because this room, it's a room when somebody puts his wings. He may be left, but it has to provoke you to be, able to feel like I want to be this person right now. I want to put these wings. They have to have a halo around them. Maybe it's an ordinary room, but the person who wears these wings, he is dreaming and not becoming an angel, but just doing good things. He has a purpose in this life, and I want to be this person. That if we succeed, that's exactly how you will feel.
And also when we look at relations, of course, the famous one in Documenta, I think 92, right? 92. Yeah, this is the toilet piece.
Keep it, don't move it. Documenta 92 was a very important piece, very stringent, which actually brought hate of, I think, half of Russia upon us. It was done like a public toilet, old public toilet, and it was a contradiction between public life and private life. Public toilet is a not private place. Suddenly people go there, nobody knew what it is. I mean, curators, museum people knew, but general public didn't know. They walk into this installation, they expect to be in the toilet, and all of a sudden they discover, oops, this is an apartment, this is a house of somebody who is living there. People may be not there, but they created in a public space a very comfortable bourgeois life. If you look at it, there is a dining room, there is a living room, there is a bedroom, and children corner. It's also a metaphor of life. It's about our life. Maybe we live in a country which right now is a toilet. But even this toilet, it's our home. We managed to create a home. And Russians took it literally. They were meeting us and saying, why did you depict Russian living in a toilet? We don't live in a toilet. Some young girls would stand up at the lecture and start crying. We don't live in a toilet. Why are you saying we live in a toilet? And I tried to explain to them, this is metaphor of life, exactly what I told you right now. Do you understand what metaphor means, what it is? Yes, I understand, but why do you say we live in a toilet?
And then this is the Soviet, the Russian pavilion, right? In 1999 or something?
93. 93.
93, yeah. Okay. So it's really interesting. That was the moment that, the collapse of Soviet Union happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told that, from what I read, and Ilya kind of refused to be considered as a Ukrainian artist. At a certain point,
too much,
he insists somehow to continue to be a Soviet man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Still does.
Yes.
We received a call one night from a Russian minister, and the call was, okay, you are selected to represent Russia in Venice Biennale, but we don't have the money. And then it was the end of the call. I said, Ilya, that's all money they have for this telephone call. Be realistic. And then we start trying to raise money. It was my job to raise money because Ilya wouldn't do it for the sake of his life. And I was calling people, I was writing letters, and one company president called me and he said, do you think I will give you money? Why should I give you money? You're Russians. I said, that's true, but Russia has a perestroika. There's nothing there. You should help a little bit. And how much you need? And I told him like triple what I need. He said, do you think I'm crazy? I give you this money? I said, no, but whatever you give me will be fine. So he gave me some money. And so this way we collected what we need for the installation. And we built with German students. And I told them, guys, you're going to wash yourself in a toilet, public toilet. We're going to sleep in the pavilion because we don't have enough money only for the materials. By the end, we actually, Ludwig said, I'm buying this installation. If I don't like it, I'm not taking it. If I like it, I'm taking it. I said, do I have to return the money because we spend them? And he said, no, you don't have to return, it's fine. If I don't buy it, you still don't owe me anything. But he took the installation by then. What the idea was, we went to the Russian pavilion. We didn't tell anybody what we're going to do. Russian pavilion wasn't used since 1941 or 37, something like this. It was in terrible condition, completely broken. There was no windows. There was huge lock on the door, which nobody had the key. We had to break the door. We have to go through the window to get inside. It was experience. And then we actually decided that we're going to pretend that we're doing restoration of this pavilion inside. So we put buckets with paint, we put scaffolding, we plastic everywhere, and we built from plywood some corridor. People start walking, and as you can see, we built a big gate around, fence around this pavilion. And garbage, a lot of garbage, piles of garbage. We had a very difficult time because Venice Biennale didn't clean anybody else, but they all the time tried to clean our garbage. So I had to put our daughters sitting there on the garbage and not letting to clean this garbage because it was part of the installation. Then outside, we place this little red pavilion. It's all paraphernalia of Soviet time, stars, flags, etc. When people open, when Biennale open, you see loudspeakers, and loudspeakers will put parade on Red Square, full sound through the whole Venice, and of course it created a lot of fun. Some people were astonished. Some people were so happy they started clapping their hands. Some people just saluted this pavilion. But the idea was that, yes, Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. Russia is trying to do perestroika. And it's in disrepair and completely destroyed right now. And it looks like Soviet Union gone forever. But be careful, because it's little, it's hiding somewhere, and it can someday come back. And that's what it was.
And then I think you continue to work internationally, really doing some major installations. This one is in Marfa, no? Marfa,
Yes,
right?
at Marfa.
Yeah.
We were friends of Donald Judd, famous American artist who unfortunately died many years ago, and we used to go to Marfa with him. We went on vacation together, and at some point he said, I would like to have installation. Everybody was kind of astonished because he's a minimalist. So his foundation and Marfa has minimalists, his friends. We didn't belong to this circle. Why he wants to have Russian Soviet artist installation? And he said, come up with proposal. And that was what we call today site-specific installation. We went to Marfa. There's barracks from the war. German prisoners were there. So you have drawings of prisoners on the walls. It doesn't have doors, windows, completely destroyed, cement buildings. The best of them, big one, it's Judd installation. There is James Turrell installation, which was put recently. A lot of his friends, Richard Long, all of them are there. And we come up with the idea. Marfa itself was a terrible place. Terrible. You can buy a building for $100 because, you know, just nobody was there. And we decided we're going to do abandoned school. At the beginning, original title was abandoned school. Then we call it school number 6. So we said it's a Russian school, Soviet school, which was closed. The children disappear. They're not there anymore. It was very typical for situation in Texas around Marfa. There was not enough children. The schools were closing, and all this building was standing there. So people immediately commiserate with this because they come to Marfa, they come to the school, and they would say, even people from Canada, oh, I was in such a school. It's so familiar to me. It's a very funny coincidence, but yesterday I think I got a letter from somebody. It's from Perelman Foundation. I don't even know this woman. I don't know where she got my mail. She wrote a very long, very emotional letter. And she said, I just come from Marfa yesterday, and I don't know you, I never met you, but I have to write to you. That was a school where I was. And the teacher lessons, the hardness of the school, the regime of the school. It was so painful for me when I was a child. And memories of it, I buried them a long time ago because I left Soviet Union a long time ago. But the school revoked these memories again, and I now remember them. But I started crying in the beginning, and then I understood it's not only my memory, it's a collective memory of our society, which was very important and kind of healed my feelings. I feel better now. It's a much longer letter, really emotional, and I didn't answer yet because I'm running around right now like a chicken. And at some point, of course, I answer. And I was surprised, you know, many years later, people from different countries still come and they find something close to their heart, some close to their memories. But that's exactly what I said in the beginning. This is total installation.
Yeah. And this actually, of course, we have. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. This one? Okay. Yeah. This is our.
No. This is our installation.
Yes.
Sorry.
Toilet,
I think. No?
The toilet?
Next one? No. This is Palace.
Oh, this one. You mean?
No, it's okay. This is Palace. This is Palace of Projects. It was done in 1997 in England first, and then traveled all around the world, and finally settled in Essen, Germany. It was done like a constructivist structure, like a snail coming up, and the idea was that this is a palace of dreams, of fantasies, but dedicated to 3 ideas: how to make yourself better, how to make the world better, and how to increase creativity. And that's actually one of the installations from this project. It's 65 ideas created by so-called common people, simple people. Of course, they are characters, they're not real, with proposals of all the 3 ideas. This is a fallen sky, and it's in Abu Dhabi, and recently it was in Japan. It's also a traveling installation. And when I was installing in Abu Dhabi a few years ago, there are 2 Arabs come, they look at and there is a plaque next to it saying that in 1960 there was a pilot in Czechoslovakia who loved the sky so much that when he retired, he painted all his apartment like a sky. And then there was a very big storm, and the part of the ceiling flew away and landed in Abu Dhabi on the beach. And one asking another, where is Czechoslovakia? And the guy said, it's somewhere in Europe, but it's far away. Yes. So how comes the ceiling landed here?
So this
is a toilet. We did it many, many years ago in Ireland, I believe, in somewhere. I don't even remember where it was. And it was there. Then it come to French Museum, staying outside. Recently, it become. I think we're going to be dying and remember it for this installation, not for anything else. It's traveling around the world. Every curator, every museum person, every artist considered their obligation to sit on the toilet and send us a photograph that he's sitting in the toilet. And the idea is, where do we feel free? In the toilet. So let's enjoy the nature, build it outside and enjoy the nature. And there are 2 seats, so you can invite a friend. There are enormous amount of work. We have works in Italy, public works. We decorate subway in Napoli station.
How about the experience in Etsukutsumari in Japan?
Do you know that we have 2 installations right now there? We come to this place, and it's a very poor area on the border with Korea. There is a very strong winters and strong winds. And in the winter, people build from hay, this kind of conuses with a hole for the eyes, and that's because they don't have enough money for the warm clothes, and that's how they travel through the snow. The house is mostly built on the 2nd level because snow in the winter is higher than human height. They produce rice. It's one of the best rice and sake in the whole Japan. But they're very poor farmers. So it's a rice fields. They were going to build Palace of Culture. I don't know if they ever built it or not. They built it?
Yes, they built it. Now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at that time, there was nothing there. And we decided we're going to build this installation on rice fields, celebrating the work of these people. There is 5 figures depicting 5 stages of rice production. So planting, weeding, harvesting, whatever else, watering. On the other side of the river, so figures are placed as you can see them on the side of the river, and directly on the rice field. They're private, they belong to these farmers. On the other side of the river, we built a platform because palace didn't exist and there was no terrace. On the platform, there is such a point, satori in Japanese. And satori is a point when you stand, so suddenly it's a moment when you really understand everything. It's like a revelation of the meaning of everything in this world. So then we build a frame, and in this frame you have 5 texts, vertical, in Japanese, each one depicting the period and the work done on the rice. Exactly, if you look through from this point, you see the figure and its explanation. Through explanation, you see the figure. It's an installation that it's permanent. They actually bought this installation. And then we start receiving some rice, boxes with rice, with the image of it. And we receive a letter from this farmer saying, Mr. and Mrs. Kabakov, thank you. Nobody ever depicted us in our work in such a colorful colors.
It's beautiful. And actually, I remember the railway station is extremely interesting. I think you need to make an installation there.
Well, recently there was another festival or some whatever they do, and these farmers come to the government and they said, "Are Kabakov coming?" They said, "No, we want Kabakov installation again." And so what we did 5 stages of life, arch of life. It's an arch with the 5 figures. It's somewhere there, I don't know where it is. 5 figures. First, it's an egg with 2 faces. One has a closed eyes, and the second, open eyes. So beginning of life, sleeping, and opening eyes, beginning of his life. Second is a boy who's standing on his knees, and he shows the face of lion to the world, but he's afraid of life. The third one is a man carrying light on his back. And so the box on the back. Fourth one is an eternal immigrant. It's a wall, and man trying to climb over the wall, he got stuck. And it's very important for our times because we have all these walls, all these barriers, and we try to climb over them. If we succeed, another story. It was originally supposed to be a monument for Berlin Wall. And the last one, it's figure, this man carrying the box fell down because the heaviness of life, it's too much for him maybe. Later we did another version with the angel by the end, I don't know. Just, as I said, we always come back to angels.
So now the angel, the man becomes angel.
How to Meet an Angel. How to Meet an Angel right now is in two places, one in Germany and one in Amsterdam in front of mental institution. It was a public project in Amsterdam, so we had to go through commissions. The idea is you have to be desperate, you don't know where to go, and you build this ladder. It's actually Jacob's ladder. And you climb up and you wait for the angel to come and save you. So in Amsterdam, discussion, public discussion was going nowhere because people was saying, normal people, let's say, would say, this is suicide. No. And patients of the mental institution, which participate in the discussions, they said, no, this is about hope. We won this. They won. That was built in front of mental institution. And we received few boxes with rap music about this, with carpets, drawings, embroidery. I don't know, you name it, you have it in this box. They all made artwork and music about angels, how to meet an angel. One which is staying in private estate in Germany, the woman occasionally calls me and she said, I was today in the garden, didn't come yet.
And this is, well, we talked about this earlier. Maybe we can go to the major project in Paris about utopia in the Grand Palais 2 years ago, which was
yes. 2 years ago we built. You have to find one which is general.
Here.
Yes. If anybody knows Grand Palais, it's the biggest space in Europe, and they start doing monumenta. It's a program for, let's say, the best artists. Before us was 4 artists. I think it was the 5th artist of Monumenta. And they were very distinguished artists like Baltansky, Kiefer,
Richard Serra,
Anish Kapoor, Richard Serra, and Daniel Buren. It's difficult to compete, and of course you understand every artist is competitive and we all want to be the best. Some of the installations were very successful, drew a lot of people, some were pure entertainment. Baltansky was very meditative, very interesting. Some of them were kind of, okay, not so good. It's a very difficult space because it's huge, it's a lot of light, infrastructure is so strong that it practically kills the work. It either looks not belonging to the space or too small in such a huge space. And we had to come with something which is very important, significant, with a general idea. And everybody around us, when we made this proposal for a strange city, were nervous because it's conceptual art, it's conceptual work, it's very philosophical. Some of it's very difficult to explain, never mind understand. It's not entertaining. You have to go from one work to the other. There were 7 buildings there, buildings really built. We built for a month, 24 hours, no Saturday, no Sunday. We had 100 people working on this project. And they were afraid the visitors will not come. They will go to a tourist place. So you have to take into consideration not only professional art curators, artists, art students. You have to take into consideration that there is enormous amount of general public with children, with backpacks. You know, they just go through. They brought there, they want to see something entertaining. This is not entertainment. We build the city, you see the walls, you see the gate, you enter. In the beginning we have another piece which is cupola. It's based on 1920 design and ideas, sound and color. Cupola has 2,000 lights and it changes colors according to music. So music in front of it. We put young musicians, different artists, performances. You see cupola, it changes colors. It's a computer program according to the music. It's Stravinsky, it's all these kind of things. You enter the space. In the very beginning at the wall, I put the sign on the wall and I didn't ask permission. You enter the strange city, no telephone, no selfies, no loud conversation. Please behave. And 5 minutes, director of Grand Palais ran to me. He said, you didn't ask my permission. We have a prize for selfies, for the best selfie. And you wrote no selfies. You can't do this. We have to take it down. I said, don't be stupid. If you say no selfies, people will try to take the selfies from very strange position because they don't want to be seen that they take the selfies. You're going to get the best selfies like nobody else going to have. And then was few installations. I'm not going to describe every installation. It's about people fears of death, of life. Two of them were dark chapel and white chapel, about life and about darkness of life, about lightness. I just say one thing. In order to make these tourists and all those people, going through, talking, being engaged with each other more than they engage with art, you need something in Whitechapel, for example, not only get their attention, but make them stop talking. And we put some music, like church bells, from Russian church bells, but a very faint sound. So in order to hear, you hear them, but you have to be quiet to hear. So everybody tried to listen, they stopped talking. We succeeded at least in this. There are some installation about cosmos, some installation were about music and sound and colors, absence of painting. But you look at the light on the wall and you listen to Mozart and you imagine, because in your imagination you are in the museum and you know there's supposed to be a painting, so you look at the empty wall, but in your mind you see the paintings, masterpieces. And it was actually, we got more visitors.
Yeah, it was
than
very.
Anybody, I think.
Yeah, actually, it was a phenomenon in the city.
Yeah, it's a phenomenon
Yeah.
of something completely different.
A lot of people were talking about that, and
so it was good.
And interestingly, also, it was involving with a lot of, let's say, utopian ideas or projects date back to the Soviet time, right?
I don't know if it's back to Soviet time because we're so Soviet Union. Everybody immediately refers to Soviet time. It's not exactly so. The first utopian idea is an idea of church about paradise. Okay, I'm sorry, but paradise is offered somewhere else after our life. Human being always want a paradise. Always. It doesn't matter what kind of utopia. It could be. Communism is idea of paradise. Fascism was idea of paradise. Capitalism is idea of paradise. It's always failed. Do we stop dreaming about it? No, we don't. So we work with utopia for a very long time. Of course, we're influenced by all these Soviet ideas of happy life. But the problem with Soviet ideas and communist idea was that it wasn't meant for us. It was meant for somebody in the future, generations which come after us. We have to work for them to be happy and be in paradise. Didn't work. People want paradise now. They want to live in paradise today. That creates a lot of problem, but we're still hoping and dreaming.
So now the opposite of the paradise is this project that you just finished. The boat of tolerance.
Why it's open?
Well, it's based
opposite
on
of paradise.
I guess this has to do with
it has to do
the reality
in order to create a paradise. We start working now, but we start working not in some crazy ideas about future generation. We have to influence our generation today. We let a lot of stupid ideas, a lot of terrorists. We have internet. Everybody is influenced by internet, by movies. We're not against this. We just think that we have to think rationally, and we don't try to influence children. We try to explain to them that you have a voice and you have a choice. When they're very small, we work usually with the children on this project. We explain them idea of tolerance. We ask their opinion about tolerance, their experience with tolerance and intolerance. And we say, how to fix the situation? What do you think? Because the idea of racism, idea of different religions and hate between religions come from fears. And fears come from unknown, something we don't know. Little child is afraid of darkness. Ground-up people are afraid of each other because they don't know cultures, they don't know religions, they don't know anything about the other person. Culture, music, art bring us together. Doesn't matter who we are, doesn't matter what color we are, because we don't need a language. You don't really need a language for this. And that's what we tell kids. Get together, talk. Terrorism does ever solve any problem, but art and culture do. So what do you think? How we can fix the world to make it better? And that's what we work for the last 12 years. That's our project. It's not our main project, but I would say it's our charity, our foundation sponsor it, and other people, of course, also. We have here in Rome saying, okay, our organization doesn't want to work with you because the church was involved. There was a kind of conflict. We are under patronage of church here, of Holy See. We are under patronage of Ministry of Education. So we are under, the ship is actually built here on the ground of Academy of Art. Hotels, which are 5-star hotels, give us room, like Eden Hotel. But it gives rooms for children. And I said, we brought children from different countries. They never saw this kind of life, and maybe never will be able to have. But they're professional musicians, they're very good. They work a lot. I think they deserve the best treatment.
So beautiful. How many countries has this, how many places has this boat sailed to, and how many more?
We started in Siva, then we went to Venice, then we went to St. Moritz. It was in Cuba, it was in Miami, New York, Moscow. Now it's here. You can go and see it. It's very beautiful. Yesterday was the opening, and every child, I frankly expect the children stand and said, I made all the drawings because we had this experience. The child would come and said, you see, that's all my work. But they were very honest. They said, each one would say, that's mine, that's mine. So they actually recognize their own work. And children are very happy. And we had a concert, we go concert with it, for which we bring children from different countries, musicians. They're between 10 years old, because we have to bring parents, we don't really supervise them. And right now the oldest is 21, because they're with us for 12 years on this project. They grow up with the project. Sometimes we appoint children ambassadors of tolerance. And they talk about tolerance at school, they grow up about, they go to nursing home. We made Table of Tolerance in Zug in Switzerland recently with the ship, and it's actually changed the life of the city. Not me saying this, the people in the city saying this. Mayor, they made program of tolerance at schools, and they continue this program. And it was cooperation of the whole city. A lot of people. It was very, very interesting. And there was a lot of refugees, they had problems. So we put men of different religion, I mean local and Muslims, refugees, at the same table on both sides with the food. And the first week was fantastic. They really had a fight. Second week, they had conversation. Now they're friends. They say hello on the street. They have to find jobs. Mothers were put in the rooms with children when they made drawings and talk about tolerance. And so mothers didn't have a choice. They had to talk. And now they're also at least familiar with each other. So the city changed a lot.
So, apart from this boat project, you are having an upcoming exhibition retrospective in Tate Modern, right, in October. How many works? What kind of scale?
Retrospective is retrospective. A lot of works started from 1954 and finishing right by the last paintings. It's very dangerous for the artist to have retrospective on many levels. Number one, because sometimes artist is very famous, he has retrospective, and we all decide he's not such a good artist. And it can kill artists. So many artists die after retrospective, from what I remember, because you have to be very careful. Maybe not even go there. But because we are installation, we have to build it. So we don't have a choice. We have to be there for a month to actually realize this. And so it's going to be called Not Everybody Will Be Taken into the Future. And it's based on the article Ilya wrote in 1982, saying, who decide for the artist who is going to be taken into the future? Malevich, teacher, professor, at school, at university, art critic, art historian, who actually is deciding your fate. And there's a kind of philosophical conversation about this and around this idea. And based on this idea, we have installation and the whole exhibition titled like this. I'm not going to describe it. You have to go and see it if you can. It's
we all hope.
Before I don't want to talk about it.
So we're all very curious. I think we still have some minutes for questions from the floor. C'è alcune domande?
proprio no, ma devo dire che la signora Emilia Kabakov mi ha riportato indietro di 40 anni, perché io ho avuto il piacere di conoscere Ilya Kabakov quando vivevo a Mosca, e appena ho visto l'annuncio qui del Maxi ho detto non posso perdermi questa opportunità di conoscere la signora Emilia e di vedere Ilya di nuovo. Purtroppo lui non è potuto venire, ma mi ricordo di quello che lei prima ha rammentato, delle visite che si facevano a questi artisti con paura di essere coinvolti in qualche storia un po' strana, e ci si avvicinava a questi atelier sempre con un po' di timore, attenzione, però alla fine uno si diceva male non fare, paura non avere, perché non era la politica il tema delle nostre visite, ma bensì era l'arte e la vita di questi pittori che avevano non poche difficoltà nel esprimersi. Grazie Emilia.
I don't think it was a question. I think it was kind of a lecture. Thank you.
Other questions?
Buonasera. Lei ha parlato di utopie personali, collettive, e comunque ci ha proposto diversi lavori per un mondo migliore. Volevo sapere invece cosa ne pensava, sia a livello artistico che personale, della distopia.
It's kind of complicated question. What is personal utopia? It's a fantasy. It's unreal. It's disconnection from reality in some way. Being an artist is already artistic utopia because you are disconnected from reality. Many artists are. General utopia is for everybody. It's about everybody, and it's include personal utopia. So the best I can answer because it's difficult for me. Translation is hardly can be heard.
E anche noi abbiamo avuto la fortuna di avere un padre che conosceva Kabakov, perché ha vissuto a Mosca in quegli anni. Sono di madre russa, sono il figlio di Giuseppe Mariano, che si è conosciuto con Kabakov negli anni 60. Ho due curiosità rispetto ai bozzetti che faceva Kabakov negli anni 60-70 sull'interpretazione. Uno riguarda il volo di Komarov, il personaggio del volo di Komarov, da dove nasce e soprattutto che tipo di interpretazione si vuole dare, perché l'arte concettuale poi dipende pure dal tipo di interpretazione che gli si dà. E l'altro invece è il prototipo dell'uomo sotto la doccia, che è molto presente, diciamo, in tutti i bozzetti di Kabakov in varie epoche anche, ed è stato, diciamo, raffigurato in diverse forme e modi. Quindi la mia curiosità era chiedere un'interpretazione all'artista di queste due diciamo, realizzazioni concettuali dei bozzetti.
Shower under the doors of the showers, and how these two figures actually haunting.
Both of them about escapism. Man in under the shower can't escape because the water covers him. He can't hear the outside. He can't translate his thoughts, his ideas, his dreams, his fears to outside world. Nobody hear him because the water covered him completely. And that was isolation from the life, from world, which was Soviet Union. That's a man in the shower. And that was in 60s and come to the West, early 70s. And Ilya lost his job because it was published in the West, actually in Italy, first time. I believe it was 67 or 57. And he couldn't get job for 4 years because of these drawings. The Man Flying, it's a completely different story. It's one of the 10 albums, one of the famous 10 albums. And this is about artists. You can look at it. There is a little confusion between 10 characters installation, which is about communal apartment, people who live in communal apartment, characters, and about 10 albums, which is actually history of art. It's 10 albums depicting different movements in art history through the eyes of the artist. But at the same time, this artist is a person who suffers from oppression, from fears, from some distortion in his life. So the flying man in this case, he walked into the balcony, he looked from the balcony down, and suddenly he disappeared. We don't know in any of these characters if they're dead, if they committed suicide, if they simply disappear, or they still somewhere there and we don't see them. That's the idea. The album built, you have the story of the character by neighbor or relative, which describe in general terms the idea of this man, of this character. Then you have drawings. And in this case, the man starts flying. And we see the world through his eyes. We don't see him anymore. We see him somewhere flying. And it's like a very flat figure flying there over. And the first he sees the street. Then he sees the city. Then he sees the country, the region, the country, the sky. Then the sky starts. First sky, second sky, third sky. And he disappears. But on the road before disappearing, he also sees some different phenomena in this world, like flying people. Some people like to be lonely, so different ideas come out. The man flying there by himself. Some people like to fish, and you see image of the man fishing. Some people like to be in groups, and they sit in somewhere. Some people bring presents from us, actually decoration. I told about subway station in Napoli. That's from the picture of one of this album, Flying People. You see many of them. So they become more and more, and the sky become crowded. They start dancing. And all of a sudden they start disappearing. So you see first half of them disappear, more than half of them disappear. Then you start seeing signs. And in between there is always commentaries of gnosticist, of historian, of common person, and so was the last, and some kind of observer of all this situation. And some of them very complicated, some of them very philosophical, and common woman can say a completely different thing. She could say, he loves his wife, or he loves blue color. And that was this album, the difference between all this.
Thank you so much for your beautiful talk and all of the stories. I was really charmed by the funding story for the Venice Biennial. And it seemed like the work was influenced by funding, obviously, in that case. And I'm wondering if there was any time later or earlier where funding for the realization of a project actually got in the way and prevented the work from conceptually being what you wanted?
Yes. Sometimes we can't raise the money. Sometimes museum doesn't have enough money to build the work. Sometimes we can't raise the money for the project. In a project like Ship of Tolerance, for example, we just spent enormous amount of money because we couldn't raise the money. So we put our money. We have to make it up right now. Think how we can make it up. That's our problem, not yours. And we don't compromise. If we can't raise the money, if it can't be done the way we want it to be done, it's not done. So we have the whole museum of unrealized projects, which we did models. At some point we realized there is no way we can actually recreate all the ideas we have, and we built little models. And then we have two buildings of models. We go through, we take excursion, museum bring collectors, our art institute brings students, and we give them a tour. We don't have staff. We don't have anybody. It's Ilya, me, and one assistant. And I just got email from somebody saying, to Kabakov assistants somebody requests work on loan. So any of Kabakov assistants, can you answer us? And then it goes, Emilia, could you please tell us if it's possible to rent this work? So you write into Kabakov assistants, and you don't know the names, and then you ended up Emilia, because you don't know to whom you write. We don't have them. And people who come to us and they see the scope of the work and the amount of works done, and actually the order in which everything is, I don't think they believe me when I say we have one assistant. And our assistant is not an artist. He doesn't have ideas. He works.
I remember a very interesting experience with maybe a comparable figure. It's Cedric Price, the English architect, utopian architect, who only built one thing in his life, which is the cage, the bird cage in London Zoo. But he has an immense influence on a whole generation of so-called radical architects, utopian architects. I remember in 1999, with Hans Ulrich Obrist, inevitably we have to talk about Obrist. But anyway, so we went to visit Cedric Price. He gave us a very early morning appointment, 7:30, in the center of London, going to knock at his office. And we went up to the office after a long corridor, and the office is totally dark, empty, and you go to the end of the corridor, you saw a beautiful gentleman in blue suits with a pink tie, having a cigar in his hand, and say, welcome. And then he said, oh, I'm sorry, my assistant just left for vacation. I could not make an espresso for you this morning. So I think being a utopian artist always has the risk of not to be able to serve an espresso.
I would like to know, as we have spoken about conceptual art, how was important for Ilya and in general for conceptual art in Russia, the opere group? They were writers, and also Malevich was a friend of them. For that period.
For a long time, they simply didn't know. They do know about Aberutes because that was books. Books were more acceptable. They didn't know about Malevich, everybody else, because the work weren't exhibited. There was nowhere to see them. And frankly, there were some artists who had access, and they did, as I call, second-hand art, because they actually did avant-garde Malevich works. Different a little bit, maybe smaller, bigger, but it was the same idea. I don't think for Ilya it was important. He always said, I don't like them because they're not human. It's about form. It's not about human souls. It's about pure form. It's very formalistic. Yes. Yeah. But then when you look at his even illustration for children books and some of his paintings, especially early works, you find elements and you find this connection. So obviously, maybe unconsciously, maybe even without seeing the works, he used some elements. Maybe it's in the air of Russian, as a so famous called Russian soul. I don't know. But it's there. It's discovered, actually, that there is a connection. So for everybody else, I can't talk about people. I know that Bulatov works mostly based on Soviet posters propaganda, but with a lot of irony and a lot of kind of hate for it. And I think atmosphere in this group was so strong that artists of this period did fantastic works only this period. Later, I'm a terrible person. I would say a lot of the work later was much weaker, not so strong as it was at this period. So collectively, they feed each other. They stimulate each other, and the works are much stronger than they did separately. Ilya was part of this group, but in a way, no. He always was a lonely, separate figure. He had a lot of fantasy, a lot of ideas, and they're mostly philosophical. They're more wider.
Traditions.
Yes, and he always was oriented to the West, not inside himself, not into the Soviet situation, not into the Soviet past, Russian past, always to the West, because Western culture for him was like a river. He was dreaming about entering this river and swimming in it. Always was afraid to drown, but was hoping he's going to swim.
Thank you.
Okay, last question. Ultima domanda.
I apologize, I really had a very long day today.
I have to tell you the secret. Emilia today is her second talk, right?
Second lecture, it's a third, I had 3 interviews. I didn't have a moment. I just had water, that's all.
Yeah. And then, thank you very much.